Hey, what is going on, everybody? I hope you all are doing well today. Elliot here, and welcome back to The Fragrance Well. So, for today's video, we are going to focus on how to be the best collector you can be, and we're going to do that by focusing on the type of collector that you are. I'm not going to say that you should be, that you are. And this is kind of dictated on what you like in fragrances. So, I've got 5 levels that I've come up with here, but we're actually only going to talk about 4. You'll see why in a second. Here's the 5 levels. We've got, or not even 5 levels, 5 types. So let me rephrase that, 5 types. We've got the smells good. We've got the smell different good. We've got the enthusiast. We've got the connoisseur. And last but not least, we've got the Pokemon. We should know what the Pokemon is when I say it. That is the collect them all, gotta catch them all. You pretty much buy any and everything. That's not gonna be most people. Very few people are gonna be like that. From a content creator perspective, think of Sebastian over at the Perfume Guy channel. That guy literally gets everything, talks about everything. His knowledge is so extensive, it's hard to even keep up. But that is not gonna be most people. In fact, if you are not in the business of fragrances in some way, and also a content creator, it makes no sense for you to do that unless you just absolutely want to. But again, that's not gonna be most people. The reason we're not gonna talk about that one is because there's no point in me featuring fragrances to kind of illustrate the point, because if you just buy up everything, why do I need to showcase any fragrances? So as a result, we got 8 fragrances that I'm gonna use to kind of help illustrate these collector types that I have come up with. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, as always, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please hit that bell icon and enable notifications so you can be notified when I upload new videos. Let's get into it. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get it started. Now, again, for me, these collector types are pretty much based on the type of fragrances you have an interest in. I would say that a collection is really like 5 fragrances and above, and I don't really feel I need to put a cap on it. If you want to have, however many you want to have based on the categories I've given, that's your business. So the first one is going to be the smell good. The smell good is the guy who simply wants to smell good all the time to as many people as possible, and his fragrances work for as many situations as possible. I hesitate to say blue scents. They don't necessarily have to be blue style fragrances, but that is the goal. He wants his fragrances to be liked by as many as possible and be easy to wear in many ways. You could say dumb reaches, but not necessarily. So the first one we're going to use to illustrate that collector type is going to be from Dior, and that's going to be Sauvage. Dior Sauvage, this is particularly the eau de parfum, but if you know the Sauvage DNA, maybe outside of the elixir, all 3 of those can work for this category. You just simply smell good. And, look, regardless of what you think of this scent, there's no denying that the fragrance does smell good. I mean, is it game changing? No, but it smells good, and it will absolutely work for pretty much any situation for the most part, and people are gonna like the smell of it, even if they're familiar with it. That's another kind of stipulation I think with the smells good category. You are a little less likely to maybe smell very unique, but maybe that's not your concern. Just in case you're not familiar with the scent DNA, it's pretty much kind of a shower gel type fragrance, a little bit of a spicy edge to it, nice lavender in there, just giving an overall shower gel clean vibe, some sweetness to go along with it, loads of ambroxan giving a warm woody vibe, and the Sauvage DNA is at least the most successful modern day fragrance release of all time, and possibly going to be on its way to becoming the most successful release of all time for men, that is. So if you want to smell good, you can always go with Sauvage. If that is your only concern, Sauvage will always work. So once again, from the house of Dior, we've got Sauvage. This is the eau de parfum in particular. Next up, got one from the house of Dolce & Gabbana, and this is going to be the One eau de parfum. Dolce & Gabbana, the One eau de parfum, eau de toilette works as well. Many of the flankers work, etc., etc. The point is, smells good. There's no denying that this fragrance is people pleasing, smells great, and while it does kind of have an overall date night scent DNA, you can use it for daytime use if you want to. It certainly will not be that offensive to anybody, at least not in my opinion. In case you're unfamiliar with this scent DNA, this is a ambery, slightly spicy fragrance, really featuring a lot of cardamom in particular. There's a little bit of a tobacco kind of hiding in the back there. There's some nice kind of grapefruit like citrus off the top. I can't remember if there's like orange blossom or something of that nature in here as well. But it's a warm, spicy, ambery fragrance that is meant to be very alluring, great for a night out situation. And in terms of just simply smelling good, this one does take the cake. But this is good quality for what it is as well. I think this is an excellent release, one of the best designer level date night fragrance releases of all time in my opinion. Once again, from Dolce & Gabbana, this is the One Eau de Parfum. Alright guys, so the next category is going to be the smell different good. The main difference between this and the smell good is you want to achieve the same things with your fragrances, but you don't mind looking for fragrances that are not what everybody else is wearing. You're looking for stuff that maybe the masses don't know about. If you talk about Dior Sauvage or Bleu de Chanel, there's a good chance even people that just aren't into fragrances like that are familiar with those scents or at least have heard of them before. While these, maybe not so much. The first one we're going to do is from Parfums de Marly, and that's going to be Layton. Parfums de Marly, Layton. Now yes, in the community, this fragrance is very well known, but in the masses, I'm talking about the general public, not fragcom, not so much. You know, you may run into someone who's heard of it or smelled it before, but in general, that's not gonna be the case. It's not gonna be like Sauvage or a Bleu de Chanel or something like that, or even the One Eau de Parfum in my opinion. If you're not familiar with this scent, this is a spicy, fresh, and sweet fragrance. Has a little bit of an apple pie kind of thing going on. Not too much, but it has that overall vibe. It also has a little bit of an aromatic touch to it, kind of adding to that freshness in here. It's quite sweet, it's vanillic. There's probably some tonka bean in here as well, somewhat ambery. The scent does work, it's people pleasing. If your goal is to simply smell good, you're not gonna fail when it comes to Layton. And when I say you're not gonna fail, I do mean in general. There's always the possibility of running into somebody that doesn't like what you're wearing or maybe just doesn't like fragrances at all. But in general, you'll have that success in terms of smelling good, being people pleasing, and being able to use it in a variety of situations. This is more of also kind of a date night centered, possibly cooler weather fragrance if you wanna throw seasonality into it. But in my opinion, for these categories, smells good, smell different good. Seasonality is not really your main focus. You may care about it if you have a lot of fragrances, but in general, you just wanna smell good and you don't care when you do it. Once again, from Parfums de Marly, this is Layton. Next up, we're gonna move to Rasasi, and this is gonna be Hawas. Rasasi, Hawas. I mean, come on, in the community at least, we know what this is in terms of smelling good and getting positive attention, longevity if you care about that. Kind of forgot to mention that before. In general, you probably do want scents that last a long time, but that's not a requirement, so to speak. But yeah, this fragrance is not very realistic smelling, but it's overall fruity, a little bit spicy, extremely sweet. Can be used in a number of situations, particularly if you just control the sprays with this. If you're in an office setting, you can certainly wear a fragrance like this, but this is a powerful scent, so you don't need to spray it ridiculously heavy. Otherwise, you're probably going to be asked to go home and scrub it off. With all that being said, this is a positive, attention garnering fragrance. It's pleasant to the nose, and if you just want to smell good, there's a scent like this will definitely give you that end result. So once again, from Rasasi, this is Hawas. Alright guys, let's move on to the enthusiast category. For the enthusiast, they certainly do want the things that the smell good, smell different good want. They don't mind having those things in their collection, but maybe they have a segment of the collection or even a majority of the collection moving more so towards scents that are a little bit more complex, maybe a little bit more artistic in nature, possibly. In general, it's going to be fragrances that the masses just are not buying in bulk, possibly not wearing at all. That doesn't make these fragrances difficult to wear. They're just not your traditional or modern day traditional, they just smell good type of fragrance. So to illustrate that point, we're gonna go to Guerlain, and this is gonna be L'Instant de Guerlain Eau de Parfum. L'Instant de Guerlain Eau de Parfum from Guerlain. If you're familiar with this fragrance, you know this is definitely not the type of fragrance DNA that is just, oh, it just smells good, it just works. I wouldn't say this is tough to wear, but not everybody's really gonna be excited about this. They may say it smells good, but they're not gonna be like, oh my God. So what is this? This is a tea fragrance that has, for me, kind of a chai tea kind of vibe, but there's also a chocolatey nature to it. A lot of anise, particularly when you first spray it on, that can be a little bit rough for some people, but it was certainly that way when I first got the bottle, but it kind of, calmed down after the bottle sat for a little bit. But yeah, a lot of anise, and lemony characteristics. Patchouli is in this. I think that kind of lends to the chocolatey nature of it. But yeah, this is a tea fragrance that has some gourmand-like vibes to it, and fragrances like this are not going to be what you find at your typical fragrance counter. So this one stands on its own a little bit, kind of ventures away from that a little bit more adventurous with your scents, if you will, and that's why I put it in the enthusiast category, because while this is a step outside of your typical smells good fragrance DNA, it's kind of a light step in my opinion. You're not really pushing that envelope all the way to the edge, so to speak. So once again, coming from Guerlain, this is L'Instant de Guerlain Eau de Parfum. All right, next one is coming from Amouage, and this is going to be Enclave. Amouage Enclave. Really, if you're kind of buying scents, I would say even Reflection Man, from the House of Amouage, any fragrance from the House of Amouage, you are basically officially in the enthusiast category as far as I'm concerned. This one in particular, think a creamy mint with a little bit of spice and an ambery kind of base to it. I love how this smells, more of a spearmint kind of smell with just a little bit of bite behind it. That's where that spice, I wouldn't really call it smoky, but you could say that. But yeah, it's just a mint fragrance where the mint is there, but it has some rough around the edges elements to it to kind of give it a little bit more bite and body and attitude, and then a creamy ambery base to it overall. This stuff smells good. I would say many people would smell this and think it smells pleasant, but they may not be like go heads over heels over it. And I also could see this one maybe being a little bit divisive. I know this one sometimes gets compared to like the smell of toothpaste, and I don't really get that from it, but I can understand it, and I can see why, even from a fragrance collector standpoint, the scent isn't for everybody. But then again, that's kind of the point. We're pushing that envelope a little bit. We're not just trying to smell good. We're trying to get a little bit more of a deeper experience from the fragrances. And again, that's not to say that one is better than the other. This just dictates the type of fragrances you may pay more attention to or add to your fragrance collection. So once again, from Amouage, this is Enclave. All right, guys, so on to the final category. This is going to be the Connoisseur. Now, this is me. This category describes me. This is the person that is into fragrances that the majority of people simply have no interest in, whether they think they smell disgusting or whether they smell them and like, okay, I like it, it smells good, but I don't have anything I would want to wear that for. We're definitely pushing the envelope in terms of artistic fragrances, maybe exotic fragrances. You're going to see why here in a second. So first off, coming up from the House of Arabian Oud, we've got the Rare Oud here. Arabian Oud, the Rare Oud. Now, I won't say if you're trying to buy oud fragrances in general, you're automatically a connoisseur. That's not the case. There are wearable oud fragrances that, frankly, I would put into the smell good category at this point. Perfect example, Versace, Oud Noir. That one probably would be a perfect example for that. That could just go into the smell good category. Anyway, this one, not so much. This is just Thai Oud, given notes from the company. And it's basically a somewhat spicy but green, resinous, woody feel to the scent DNA. It kind of has its own note breakdown, has this almost cardamom, coriander kind of spicy feel up front, and then that kind of settles down and you're just kind of left with this resinous, green, slightly woody oud, if you will, and that's basically the fragrance. Most people would get their nose on this and be like, nah, I wouldn't buy that, I wouldn't wear it, I wouldn't even know what to do with that, or they may think it smells disgusting. And given the cost that this goes for, if you're not into something like this, you would not spend your money for it. But I like stuff like this. I wouldn't buy everything that kind of has this characteristic to it, but if it captivates me, I'm gonna add it to my collection. I'm also gonna talk about it on my channel. Once again, from Arabian Oud, this is the Rare Oud. All right, and last but not least, we got one from the House of Goldfield and Banks, and this is gonna be Purple Suede. Goldfield and Banks, Purple Suede. So this scent here, compared to many of the fragrances that Goldfield and Banks offers, I think this one kind of sits in that connoisseur category, especially for me, particularly because this is the first scent I ever bought from the house, and I had access to all those ones that are much more wearable, much more usable, all that good stuff. And this one here pushes that envelope a little bit. What is this? This is pretty much what it suggests. It's a lavender and leather fragrance. The lavender in here I find to be a little bit more fruity than your typical lavender. That's because it's Tasmanian lavender, so it has a different, you know, kind of scent characteristic than say your French lavender does. And then the leather in here is a kind of a deep suede leather. It's not really animalic, but there's some animalic notes in this to add a little bit more depth and a little bit more funk to this. I think there's civet in here. I can't remember if there's any oud, but I do know there's civet in here, and it does add this kind of almost sweaty nature to the fragrance, particularly if you just, you know, do this, smell it up front. But in the air, it's a lot more balanced. It just kind of adds a little bit of bite to the scent. But point being, most people are not gonna go for a fragrance like this. They may think it smells interesting or may think it smells absolutely disgusting, to be completely honest. For me, this is a connoisseur type fragrance from this house because they have many things that are definitely easy to wear, and even some that, matter of fact, they got stuff that kind of fits into all of these categories as far as I'm concerned. But this one here, I don't know if this is I guess what you could consider the toughest fragrance to wear out of all of them, but it's up there in terms of fragrances that many just wouldn't really consider because they just don't think they could have any usage out of it or just don't like the way it smells. Once again, from Goldfield and Banks, this is Purple Suede. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for this video. Again, didn't really feel the need to go over the Pokemon category. Gotta catch them all because add any of these fragrances and every fragrance I have in my cabinet that will qualify for the Pokemon category. I hope you found some value in this video. Let me know down in the comments below what type of collector you think you are. I think it's important to understand that because you understand what you have an interest in and you can divert your attention to that style of fragrance without wasting your time on stuff that you know you would never wear or never want to buy. I appreciate you guys watching all the way until the end. Please remember to be well and smell well, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Fragrance Well. Have a good one.